Before we dive into today's story, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us till the very end. And if this story moves you, share your thoughts in the comments and send it to a friend who needs to hear it. Now, let's begin. Clara Jennings stands at the hospital window after a night shift, watching the Blue Ridge Mountains turn from gray to gold, and she breathes the clean morning air like a prayer she never says out loud. She is a pediatric nurse, steady-handed when the monitors beep, gentle when fear makes small hands tremble. "You're a calm one, Clara," the charge nurse often tells her, and Clara just smiles and says, "The kids need it." She has always been the steady one at home. 2. The daughter who plans, the daughter who cleans up, the daughter who keeps quiet so no one else has to. When people ask where she is from, she says Asheville, and it fills her mouth with the taste of coffee on cold mornings and the smell of oil and pine. At the end of the corridor, an orderly jokes, "Sun's up, saints off duty," and Clara laughs light and soft. She slings her bag over her shoulder and promises the sleepy in turn, "I'll bring muffins next time." In the parking lot, the air bites and she tells herself the same line she has used since nursing school. One step, then the next. Her mother taught 3rd grade until her knees complained. Her father kept a small garage on Biltmore Avenue, humming like a hymn. "We fix things," he would say, grease under every nail, "and we don't quit." Clara repeats it now, not as an order but as a comfort, and walks toward a day she thinks she understands. She has no idea how fast a life can tilt or how far a heart can fall. But in this quiet moment, she believes, honestly believes, that steady is strong enough to hold the world. At home, steadiness has always met a storm named Bella Jennings, the younger sister with a laugh that could turn heads at a red light and eyes that learned how to win a room before they learned long division. Their mother would clap for both girls at school plays, but the applause always stretched a little longer when Bella stepped forward in glitter and light. "She's a sparkler," their mother would say, smoothing a ribbon in Bella's hair, and then to Clara, warm and loving, "And you're the lantern, clear and constant." Their father worked late and came home smelling like gasoline and old radios, pressing a kiss to each daughter's forehead, murmuring, "My girls!" Clara and Bella loved each other, truly did, but love had to weave through the tangle of borrowed sweaters never returned, apologies that sounded like excuses, and Friday nights when Bella needed the car more than Clara did. At 17, Bella won a pageant in a dress she bought on credit. At 19, she dropped a college class because the professor had bad energy. She would cry, make promises, then arrive late with mascara perfect and a story too dramatic to question. "I'm sorry, Claire Bear," she would say, hugging tight, "I'll do better." Clara would rub her shoulder and whisper, "Okay." On a summer evening years later, the family sat on the porch while cicadas buzzed. Bella twirled her phone and grinned. "I'm meant for big things," she declared. Clara sipped sweet tea and answered, "You're meant for kindness, too." Bella rolled her eyes and laughed like bells. They were sisters, bound by childhood and hope, and Clara believed that even a storm can learn where to rest. Clara met Lucas Hale at a hospital charity breakfast where the coffee was weak and the speeches were strong. He stood near the back in a navy suit and a tie that understood restraint, listening as if every word mattered. When a donor asked for directions, Lucas answered with a smile and walked her there, briefcase swinging lightly at his side. He was a corporate lawyer, sharp, composed, careful with promises, and when he and Clara reached for the same leftover blueberry muffin, he said, "Please," and let it go, then added, "I'm a cinnamon man anyway." She laughed, surprised by the easy charm. "Clara," she introduced herself. "Lucas," he replied, and then, "Do you ever get to sit during a shift?" She told him about 12-hour marathons, about quiet victories, a fever easing, a scared child sleeping, and he listened as if rest could wait. "You sound like someone who keeps the wheels on," he said. "You sound like someone who polishes them," she teased, and he grinned. Their first date was at a small bookstore cafe where the owner wrote drink orders in cursive on real china. You read legal thrillers? Clara asked, amused. I read contracts. Lucas deadpanned, then softened. And anything with a good ending. Over time, she liked how he ordered just enough, how he checked his watch, but still stayed. He liked how she remembered names, how she touched the rim of her cup when choosing her words. We balance, Lucas told her once, walking along the French Broad River. You're practical. I'm decisive. Clara answered with a smile that reached her eyes. And both hopeful, she said, as the water carried sunlight downstream. The proposal came in autumn at an overlook where the mountains wore their brightest red and gold, like a last warm laugh before winter. Lucas parked the car and took Clara's hand without speaking, the wind tugging her hair and the sky laid open like a promise. You brought me to church, she joked softly, and he nodded serious. It feels like that. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet box, not flashy, not heavy, just sure. Clara Jennings, he said, voice steady but full. I want a life with you. The kind where we pay the power bill on time and miss the trash pickup sometimes and hold on to each other when the good parts feel like lightning. Will you marry me? Her laugh broke on a tear. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, a simple round diamond that caught the sun and made a rainbow on her skin. They hugged, so close she felt his heartbeat in her own ribs. Back in town, they told her parents first. Her mother clasped Clara's hands and cried happy tears. Her father pulled Lucas in for a rough hug and muttered, Welcome, son. Bella arrived late in a rush of perfume and shine, threw her arms around Clara and squealed, Look at that rock! Then, breath warm at Clara's ear, she murmured, He's a little predictable, isn't he? At least he won't surprise you. Clara laughed it off, answering, Predictable can be peaceful. And Bella smiled like a secret she didn't plan to share. That night, Clara lay awake with the window cracked, listening to the leaves whisper, cupping the ring in her palm like a tiny, bright future she meant to protect. They planned a porch swing life in careful steps, 2 calendars taped to the fridge, and a shared note on their phones called Us. Clara said, Small wedding, big love, and Lucas agreed, tapping numbers into a neat spreadsheet. Saturdays became venue tours and cake tastings, the kind of weekends that leave your feet sore and your heart light. This one smells like roses, Clara said in a white barn strung with lights. This one smells like money, Lucas countered, smoothing the brochure. In a furniture aisle at IKEA, they sank into a charcoal couch and teased each other about throw pillows. We can't afford 12, he said. We can't afford ugly, she said, and he laughed so loudly the clerk smiled. At night, they practiced, cooking together. You chop, I char, Lucas announced as smoke alarmed the kitchen. You order pizza. I forgive you, Clara answered, waving a dish towel. When invitations were sketched out on the table, Bella offered help with vendors and dresses, materializing with ideas like confetti. You need drama, she said, flinging her arms wide. I need a marriage, Clara replied, gentle but firm. Bella pouted and then kissed her cheek, cooing, Anything for you, Claire Bear. Their mother brought old lace. Their father measured the backyard as if a reception might bloom there by accident. On quiet evenings, Clara rested her hand on Lucas's arm and said, I like the way you think ahead. He kissed her forehead and answered, I like the way you care. The mountains stood steady outside their windows, blue and faithful, and Clara told herself that if she kept choosing kindness and doing the next right thing, the future would meet her halfway with its own open hands. Yet, even as Clara stitched plans together with patience, small frays began to show along the edges. Bella appeared more often at their apartment, arms loaded with scarves she just had to share, or excuses that sounded rehearsed. I was passing by, she said, settling onto their couch without waiting for an invitation. Lucas poured her a drink, and she laughed too brightly at his jokes, laying a hand on his sleeve as though testing fabric. Clara noticed the seconds his eyes lingered. The curve of Bella's smile held just a breath too long. At night, Clara told herself she was imagining it. "They're just being friendly," she whispered to her reflection, but her gut coiled tight like a rope. One evening after a long shift, Clara unlocked the door early and found Lucas and Bella side by side with bourbon glasses, the air thick with unspoken explanations. Bella lifted a book in her hand, stammering, "I was just returning this." Lucas added, "And she stayed for one drink." Their smiles looked pasted on. Clara kissed Lucas's cheek, greeted her sister, and said nothing. Later, Lucas grew distant. His phone clung to his palm. His voice turned sharp when Clara asked about late meetings or weekend trips. "Why are you interrogating me?" he snapped once, eyes flashing. Clara shrank into silence, but inside, suspicion gnawed like termites beneath polished wood. The collapse came on a Thursday night, sudden as a slammed door. Clara sat beside Lucas on the gray couch they'd chosen together, the IKEA tag still tucked under one leg. He held himself rigid, voice clipped. "Clara, I'm not sure about us anymore. I feel trapped. We're not who we were." No warning, no fight, just those words, cold as winter stone. Clara blinked, searching his face for softness, but he gave none. Within 2 weeks, his side of the closet hung empty. She wandered through shifts like a ghost, her hands steady on children's 4 lines while her inside screamed. At home, she collapsed into bed without dinner, staring at the ceiling fan until dawn. Friends called, begged her to come out, but she shook her head, whispered, "I can't." One morning, clutching her phone like a lifeline, Clara scrolled and froze. On Bella's Instagram story, a blurry shot in a dim bar, Lucas's arm slung around Bella's shoulders, his hand resting boldly on her thigh. The timestamp was last night. Clara's heart cracked in her chest. She called Bella, no answer. She sent a message, blocked. She dialed Lucas, voicemail. The silence told the story. Her sister and her fiancé together, and the world Clara had built collapsed with ruthless finality. Months later, Clara learned how to function without really living. She worked, she breathed, she even smiled at patients, but her laughter was gone. Then one evening during a chaotic ER shift, she met Dr. Ethan Ward. A toddler crashed into crisis, alarms blared, and in the eye of the storm, Ethan moved, calm, assured, decisive without arrogance. His dark hair was damp with sweat, his voice warm with a Nashville drawl. "Hold steady," he told Clara, and she did. When the child stabilized, Ethan leaned against the wall, exhausted. Clara, trembling from adrenaline, stood at the coffee machine. "Rough night," Ethan murmured, handing her a steaming cup. She met his hazel eyes and felt, for the first time in weeks, the weight in her chest lighten. They began sharing coffee after shifts, then dinners in quiet Asheville corners. He asked about her, and when Clara confessed the whole ugly story, Lucas, Bella, the Instagram, even the gold-foiled wedding invitation that arrived weeks later, Ethan listened without interruption. She braced for pity or discomfort, but instead he leaned back, sipped his beer, and said, "So let's go." Clara frowned. "To their wedding?" "Yeah," Ethan replied, steady as stone. "You'll show up, look incredible, and remind them they didn't break you." She laughed nervously, but he didn't flinch. "We'll make it a night they won't forget," he promised, and for the first time, Clara wanted to believe it. The day of the wedding arrived, draped in nerves. Clara slid into a deep emerald dress that clung and flowed with power. Her dark hair curled, lips painted a fierce red. She stepped into heels that clicked like punctuation. Ethan waited in a navy suit, his shoulders broad, his tie sharp. He said, "Only, you're stunning," offering his arm with quiet certainty. Together they drove into the Blue Ridge Mountains, winding roads opening to a vineyard strung with flowers under an oak arch. The ceremony had begun, rows of guests in pastel dresses and pressed suits turning to stare as Clara, and Ethan walked down the aisle. Bella stood radiant at the altar, lace gown shimmering, her smirk curved sharp as glass. Lucas, stiff in his tuxedo, glanced at Clara, color draining from his face. Guests whispered, curious. Clara felt her knees tremble until Ethan's hand pressed gently against her back. When Bella reached for the microphone before the vows, her voice dripped with venom, cloaked as charm. "Funny story," she cooed, eyes locking on Clara. "Lucas proposed to my sister first, but we all know she was just a warm-up act." Laughter rippled through the crowd, cruel and cutting. Clara's throat burned with humiliation, but Ethan squeezed her hand, grounding her. Then he stood, slow, deliberate, the entire vineyard pausing to watch. Adjusting his cufflinks, he said, clearly, "Actually, I'm her upgrade." The words sliced the air. Silence thundered. Whispers erupted. Bella's smile drained away. Lucas's jaw tensed. Clara turned toward Ethan, her chest swelling with something fierce and free. For the first time in months, she smiled, not from spite, but from strength. The ceremony stumbled forward, Bella's laugh brittle, her vows rushed, Lucas's voice flat like a man reading from a script. Guests glanced between the altar and Clara, their whispers sharp as the mountain wind. At the reception, chandeliers glittered above tables piled with roses. Clara and Ethan were tucked at the back near distant relatives. "How are you holding up?" Ethan asked quietly. Clara shrugged, sipping her wine. "It feels like theater." Ethan's lips curved. A bad play with free drinks. Toasts followed. The maid of honor droned about finding true love, her words aimed like darts at Clara. Lucas's best man, a boisterous frat boy, grinned and said, "Sometimes you gotta test drive before you buy." Laughter erupted, shallow and mean. Clara's hand shook around her glass until Ethan leaned close and whispered, "They're clowns, and you don't belong in their circus." The words steadied her. Bella rose next, her smile glittering but her eyes sharp. "Love's messy," she drawled. "Sometimes you don't get it right the first time, but when you know, you know." "Daniel," she caught herself, flustered. "Lucas, thank you for choosing me." Clara almost laughed at the desperation behind Bella's poise. Ethan murmured, "She's trying too hard." Clara's lips curved despite the ache. When the dancing began, Ethan pulled her onto the floor. The country ballad was slow and Clara expected stiffness, but in his arms she felt safe. Across the room, Bella's smile faltered, and Lucas hovered at the bar, his eyes on Clara like a man haunted. Lucas finally approached, his steps hesitant. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice low. Ethan glanced at Clara, who nodded. He stepped aside but stayed near. Lucas led Clara to the garden, jasmine thick in the air. He looked weary, his once polished charm dulled. "You look different," he said softly. Clara held his gaze. "I am." He shoved his hands in his pockets. "I didn't think you'd come. Things with Bella had happened fast. She needed me, and Clara cut him off. "You didn't plan it, but you did it. You could have been honest. Instead you lied. You hid. You humiliated me." Lucas dropped his eyes. "I'm sorry, Clara. You didn't deserve how I handled it." She exhaled slowly. "I don't hate you, Lucas. I just don't need you anymore." His face shifted, like he wanted absolution, but she offered none. Ethan appeared then, steady as always. "Everything okay?" he asked, calm but firm. Clara nodded, and Lucas stepped back into the shadows of the reception. Clara turned toward Ethan, her shoulders loosening. "Let's get some air," she whispered. Together, they walked into the night, where fairy lights glowed and the mountains stood silent witnesses. In the cool vineyard garden, Clara leaned against a stone wall while Ethan stood beside her, hands in his pockets, not crowding, just present. "You did good," he murmured. Clara let out a trembling laugh. "I'm tired of staying quiet. Bella thought I'd break, didn't she?" Ethan nodded. "She planned on it, But you didn't. Clara gazed out at the rows of vines fading into the dark. That's Bella. She doesn't just want to have something. She wants everyone to know she took it. I don't hate her. I wish I did. It'd be easier. I'm just done. Ethan's voice was steady. You've been done for a long time. Tonight just proved it. Clara smiled faintly, realizing he was right. Inside, the party unraveled, Bella scrolling on her phone. Lucas sipping drinks he didn't finish. Guests whispered, glancing toward Clara and Ethan instead of the bride and groom. Clara laughed with strangers, danced with cousins, felt alive. Later, waiting for the valet, she looked back at the glowing hall where a greenery wall declared in gold cursive, "Forever starts now." It looked hollow, like a stage play already closing. In the car, the mountain roads winding, Clara exhaled as though finally free. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan glanced at her, his hazel eyes steady. "You don't need to thank me. You weren't broken, Clara. You were rebuilding." She turned to the window, sunrise already brushing the horizon, and realized he was right. Bella and Lucas hadn't destroyed her. They had only cleared the path for Clara to find herself again. For the first time, she believed her own story was just beginning. Like and subscribe to my channel for more contents like this, and let us know where you are watching from under the comment section.